I want to get to this Pat McAfee, Aaron Rodgers thing. I can't play the bite for you because, as you know by now, it is copyrighted. But Aaron Rodgers does a Tuesday hit where, by most reports, some reports, he makes an exorbitant amount of money, Aaron Rodgers, to appear on Pat McAfee's show during the season and well after. The issue has become, as we have reported on this show, there is consistently been fatigue and consternation. Now it is, I am told, infighting at ESPN about the lack of control that ESPN has on Pat McAfee's show. You don't know what I'm talking about. Pat McAfee left his YouTube exclusively. His show is still on YouTube. Pat McAfee left YouTube only, and FanDuel, who was paying him $30 million a year by some reports, to go to ESPN full-time. As part of that agreement, Pat McAfee gets the Pat McAfee Show on ESPN essentially across their platforms, excluding radio. And then he hosts College Game Day and various other college football programming. And they have zero editorial control or input. ESPN has zero editorial control or input over the Pat McAfee Show. So when Aaron Rodgers gets on that show and starts railing about all kinds of tinfoil hat things, from vaccinations to politics to government repression, all of which are blacklisted at ESPN. As somebody who worked there, there are just things you do not talk about at ESPN. Politics are one of them. And ESPN is powerless to do anything about it. And I am told by sources at ESPN that they believed Pat would, quote, play ball. Hey, we need you to really, back away. And Pat has not played ball in any way, shape, or form on the Pat McAfee Show. So it should have come to surprise of nobody when yesterday on the Pat McAfee Show, Aaron Rodgers was talking about the Jeffrey Epstein flight logs that were being released and some of the client lists that are going to be released. And he didn't hint at, he straight up said Jimmy Kimmel would be nervous and essentially said Jimmy Kimmel's going to be on those Jeffrey Epstein client lists. And immediately the house caught on fire and is burning to the ground, because I am told by people at ESPN that that was kind of the last straw for a lot of the behind the scenes people, including talent, who did not much appreciate that Pat McAfee did not push back on that. That Pat McAfee did not say, Aaron, whoa, do you have any evidence of that? Or do what most people would do, which is what I was waiting for him to do and what I thought he was going to do, which was, hey, well, we haven't seen Jimmy Kimmel's name really anywhere associated with that, because that's what you should do when a guest on your show throws out a wild accusation with nothing to back it up, which is exactly what, in my opinion, Aaron Rodgers did there. Because we have never had Jimmy Kimmel associated with Jeffrey Epstein, and I went and looked for it and could not find it. And I would also point out nobody else has found it either. And then Jimmy Kimmel came out swinging on Twitter almost immediately after that happened, where he talked about how he was going to sue. And he said, "Dear asshole, Aaron Rodgers, for the record, I've not met, flown with, visited, or had any contact whatsoever with Epstein, nor will you find my name on any list other than the clearly phony nonsense that soft-brain wackos like yourself can't seem to distinguish from reality. Your reckless words put my family in danger. Keep it up and we'll debate the facts further in court." And what Jimmy Kimmel is talking about there is that the known names that are on those Jeffrey Epstein lists, many of them have had their lives threatened, have had their families accosted in public. So when you're Pat McAfee and you're on ESPN, you're not on a small network. And when you allow Aaron Rodgers to come on and accuse Jimmy Kimmel without any evidence of being on those lists, it's reckless and dangerous, and it puts ESPN at great liability. Oh, and then there's the whole conversation of the fact that what does Jimmy Kimmel do for a living? He hosts Jimmy Kimmel Late Night on ABC. Who owns ABC? Disney. Who owns Disney? Or who owns ESPN? Disney. This is a family matter. And again, here we have Pat McAfee and his show going after somebody in the family. And it just gets old. And again, here we have Aaron Rodgers on the Pat McAfee Show going after people in the family. Adam Schefter, Diana Rossini at one point. Like just calling Adam Schefter a liar.
Right.
Calling Diana Rossini a liar, even though everything she said eventually came true. They signed all of his former receivers. It's remarkable to me that ESPN allows this to continue. Are you surprised that they have not taken action?
I think I'm not necessarily surprised they haven't taken action yet, because I think it's a difficult position to be in. I mean, they don't have editorial control over Pat. So it's not like they can say, hey, you can't do this or you can't say that or whatever. They don't have that ability. So really they're left in this position where it's like, hey, do we keep Pat on the network or do we cut him? And what's the buyout if we cut him? I mean, that's the position you're in. And that's a really difficult part about this. So the decision, if you're ESPN and really if you're Disney at this point, is, hey, do we let Jimmy Kimmel set fire to Pat McAfee? Because he will. I have no doubt about that. Are we good with just letting this play out? Are we taking the stance of, hey, we're Disney, we're ESPN and ABC, we're a bigger brand in totality. We can absorb this type of drama within the family? Because that's a reality you're having to look at because of the position you're in with Pat. Also, on the other side, if we cut Pat, what does that make us look like? Is that us saying that we made a huge mistake with Pat McAfee? Is that us saying that hey, we dipped our toe in the water of having, and I don't even know what you would call it, but startup show that we signed as a free agent, essentially as a contractor coming onto the network? We dipped our toe in that and we're never going to do that again? Is that what your story is going to be if you cut him? So that's why I'm saying I don't think this is just some easy little decision of like, oh yeah, like, hey, we're going to just cut Pat or we're just going to keep him. It's not that simple. By the way, I also think you have to consider the fact that, Jimmy Kimmel wasn't the only one who heard that, right? Your ad partners hear these things. What does anybody advertising on ESPN think of this? Because the people who advertise on Pat's show directly, like Verizon, let's say, probably don't care about this all that much. They've signed on for long-term agreements. Yeah. They are just there for the visibility. So to me, this is a difficult decision. And I think that the thing that surprises me so much is that Pat McAfee doesn't seem to give a damn about whether he's on ESPN or not. He does not care. I
would agree with that.
Like the way you're behaving tells me that you just want to you think that you can just have the biggest names on your show and that's going to carry you. And the thing that bothered me so much today is that now the news cycle is saying, oh, well, Pat apologized and
I think it's important to say Pat did apologize. He came out on his show today and said, hey, Aaron was just being Aaron and we try to be free for him and have conversations. And he didn't specifically say, I'm sorry for what Aaron Rodgers said. That's not what he said. And I think that's a really important point. By the way, a little breaking news just happened 5 minutes ago. Those Epstein documents now have all been released. Hundreds of pages, including Ghislaine Maxwell's deposition, and the website that is hosting them is already crashed. So it may be a minute before we get them. But finish your point. It's really important that that's not. Pat apologized somewhat today, not about what Aaron Rodgers said.
In my opinion, it was a half-assed apology. That's my opinion. I don't think that Pat in his head was like, man, I really got to apologize for this. This is wrong. I messed up here. I should have backed Aaron down. I should have,
I should have stepped in.
I should have stepped in. Like,
and I'm told that ESPN went to Pat this morning and said, hey, And Pat agreed to make a statement, which he did. But a lot of people are comparing this to the Washington State situation where he did apologize. But that's because that's game day. That's college game day. And they have editorial control over Pat on that show. And I think the hard part here is that everybody wants to say, well, Jimmy Kimmel went after Aaron Rodgers on his show. Let's get something straight. Making fun about Aaron Rodgers, because what Jimmy Kimmel said on his show, and I was actually watching it when he said it many months ago, he said that Aaron Rodgers is a tinfoil hat wearing guy and talked about his conspiracy theories, made fun of his time in the darkness. And do you really think that's comparable to saying that Jimmy Kimmel is on the Epstein lists? You think that's comparable when we're talking about people getting death threats and being physically attacked as pedophiles? You really think what Jimmy Kimmel, who's paid to roast people, that's his job, you really think that's the same thing as Aaron Rodgers going on the single largest sports talk show on the planet? Because let's not forget that. Pat McAfee's the face of sports talk in this country. There is no other. There's no number two. It's Pat McAfee. You really think that's the same thing as Jimmy Kimmel joking on his late night show, which might have a quarter of the audience that Pat McAfee has, and then putting Aaron Rodgers on the single largest sports platform in the world and saying that Jimmy Kimmel has ties to Jeffrey Epstein? So you can sit here, and I see in the comments where people are saying that Jimmy Kimmel is a wackadoo and he can't take it. And do you really think it's funny to say that? What if I said, well, hey, you're on the Epstein list? You think, and then people are coming to your front door or calling you or sending you letters or emails, tweets, DMs, threatening you and your family. You think that's funny? I don't think that's funny. I don't think that. And no, Boyd, I disagree with you 100%. Kimmel is not a wuss in any way, shape, or form. We're talking about wackadoos who went into pizza joints in New York looking for pedophile operations. You understand that that's what this is, that this is not funny. It's not a joke. And the people at ESPN, the best part about the ESPN thing, people are like, oh, well, ESPN's a Democratic mouthpiece. Well, wouldn't they be talking about politics all the time if that were the case? They're not. Would they have muzzled Stephen A. Smith if that were the case? They wouldn't have. ESPN doesn't lean, liberal, or they're neocon. They understand who they are now. Were they political at one point? Yes, they were. Are they political now? No, they're not. When's the last time you saw people on there talking about Donnie or it's not what they, I know when it was. It was Aaron Rodgers on the Pat McAfee Show. That's the problem. You have people that have completely changed their content delivery system, and you still get people like Pat, who now has no oversight at ESPN for his show, and Aaron Rodgers goes on and says that Jimmy Kimmel, one of the most popular comedians, whether you like him or not, he's one of the most popular comedians in the world, and you're saying that, oh yeah, he's on the Epstein list. You can't undo that.
Yeah.
How many people today are like, yeah, man, can you believe that Jimmy Kimmel's on the Epstein list?
It's disappointing that we have people in the comment section saying that this is the same thing, and that, so instead of saying, accusing someone of being on the Epstein list on that type of platform is not cool, we're sitting here saying Jimmy Kimmel's a wuss.
Yeah. Boyd Lake also says ESPN and ABC are both Disney properties. Kimmel slams and makes fun of Rodgers all the time. This is tit for tat. Again, I will just ask, you think saying that Aaron Rodgers freely admits he is a conspiracy theorist. He freely talks about vaccinations, which nobody else at ESPN is allowed to even get near. He goes on Pat's show and talks about vaccinations.
Yeah, I've been immunized.
Aaron Rodgers does that. Jimmy Kimmel, who makes fun of all kinds of people like Aaron Rodgers and Pat McAfee, that's what his job is. You really think that's the same thing as saying that Jimmy Kimmel, and it wasn't a joke, it wasn't tongue-in-cheek per se, He straight up said Jimmy Kimmel is nervous about those lists coming out. Are you kidding me? That's not the same thing.
Yeah. And I'm a little surprised, dude.
This is not, you said Kimmel needs to learn to take heat. That's not what this is. That's not what this is at all. At all, in my opinion. Boyd Lake, Kimmel roasts people for a living. He can't take the heat, needs to get out of the kitchen. I don't understand. Okay. Am I losing my mind on this? You really think saying that Aaron Rodgers wears a tinfoil hat after he's talked about vaccinations, elections, politics, all of the main conspiracy theories, aliens, ayahuasca, 9/11, all of the conspiracy theories, and he's into them. And Jimmy Kimmel says he wears a tin hat. You think that's the same thing as Aaron Rodgers going on Pat's show and saying that Jimmy Kimmel's on a pedophile list? And is a pedophile, because that's what he's saying. He's saying that Jimmy Kimmel is a pedophile. You think that's the same thing? I think you guys are losing your mind. You're losing. And N Donuts apparently agrees. Yeah, maybe I'm losing my mind. I don't think that's the same thing at all.
Yeah, you guys have no idea. If you think that this is the same thing, that's
crazy,
night, dude.
That's crazy.
You need to learn how to separate your opinion of Jimmy Kimmel's work with someone accusing him of being a pedophile. Notice the difference here. Jimmy Kimmel doesn't talk about Aaron Rodgers as a football player. Yet what is Aaron Rodgers doing? Oh, that's right. Aaron Rodgers, as usual, makes it personal and says that, hey, yeah, you need to be worried about those lists. Jimmy's going to be worried about those lists because, he's a pedophile and he was on the plane and, he sexually assaulted all those females and he was part of the Bill Clinton and Donnie and all those guys going to some island. Like, I have no shame in saying I'm disappointed that we're sitting here having
wild
to discuss this.
John DeLong, what's up, John? Is anyone really surprised that McAfee is acting like a super douche when he wasn't put on a leash? I don't think he's acting like a super douche. You didn't fully understand who you were doing business with.
Yeah, this is Batman and Joker, dude. ESPN's Batman and Pat McAfee's Joker.
Pat McAfee has never been a journalist. Pat McAfee has never been held to account for the things he says. And again, I talk about this on this show all the time. This is why YouTube is a pain in my ass, literally. And the words podcast are a death knell to shows like ours because we actually are held to account. We have an ethical standard. You can't believe that a guy that has no ethical or journalistic training is just going to show up and be ethical and journalistic.
Why does he have a disclaimer?
It's, to me, the biggest thing that ESPN did here is they sold themselves out. They said, we want your money and your audience. Bring them. Here's a blank check. And by the way, there are no rules. Only thing you can't do, can't say the F word. Okay, great. Those are the rules. That's the entire...
Can't say the F word, Pat, but have you and your boys accuse people of being pedophiles. We're fine with that.
And here's $54 million a year.
It's ridiculous.
That's the deal.
So I'm saying, how are we in a place where we can't say, hey, yeah, Jimmy Kimmel is a paid comedian, someone who's paid to create roasts of people. Okay, fine. And he roasted Aaron Rodgers as part of that. Fine. That's business. That's what the guy is literally paid to do. You are saying that? I agree with it. Let's not be confused. But where we part company is the idea that you guys somehow think that accusing someone of being a pedophile on this level or at all is like somehow okay and that Jimmy just needs to take it. That's insane to me.
Yeah. It crazy. Sean Rollins, he's the Jimbo of sports talk. Fire me, go ahead, but I'm the greatest type cocky attitude. But you knew that. I mean, you can say what you want about. I'm a daily watcher of his show, but what did I say to Jake today? Hey, this Aaron Rodgers shit is starting to turn me off to the Pat McAfee show.
He's losing. So you need to understand that I've never been a huge fan of Pat's show.
I have to bend Jake's arm to turn it on.
It is the classic bunch of dudes just sitting around. And Pat said this today, and it bothers me so much. And this is where ESPN made a huge mistake in selling themselves out. Pat has no problem, and I would even go as far as to say loves, explaining the idea that they don't have a plan. There's no script. They're just gonna. The only thing that's really
said that
scripted,
today.
The only thing that's scripted that they do every single day, it's part of their thing, is the open plays, and then they do their whole thing. That's what they do. It's every single day.
They know what they're going to talk about. Hey, we're going to talk NFL today. Aaron Rodgers coming on, JJ Watt's coming on. But they just have a bunch of dudes that sit around and talk sports. Like for us, we line our shit out like every single day. Excuse my French. We line our topics out. We know what angles are. We know where we're going to. We have questions. We call people. Like we work really hard to have like a conversation structure. The best and the worst part about Pat's show is he does not. So we wind up sitting around and Aaron Rodgers, because you don't have a question list for him, winds up talking about Jimmy Kimmel being a pedophile.
Yeah, and I don't even think it's an interview at that point. It is, hey, so this is, in my opinion, how I perceive Pat with the Aaron Rodgers and really basically all the people that come on his show every single week. Okay, I'm Pat McAfee. I'm on ESPN. I'm getting paid all this money. So what I'm going to be is a middleman. I'm going to take the money that ESPN's paying me. I'm going to turn that into talent fees for all these guests. The ESPN folks are different, but guys like Aaron Rodgers or anybody he brings on that's not at ESPN, I'm going to turn around and pay these people to come on the program. And I'm just going to give these people softball questions, give them a lot of runway, let them talk, and we'll just deal with it. That's what he does. He's not a journalist. He's not credible. And that's not his thing.
It's led to Aaron Rodgers making numerous mistakes. Like the Diana Rossini thing's a perfect example. Yeah. Diana reported that Aaron Rodgers had told the Jets, hey, here's a list of dudes I want. Aaron came on and said, oh, I don't know what Aaron never said, hey, I never gave them a list. He never said that. He said he said that's not how it went down. And then what do you know? The people on the list are all on the Jets. Go to the Achilles injury thing. Aaron Rodgers all season long. I'm coming back. I'm coming back. And what did Pat do? Man, you look really cool. Hey, what about this? Look at you throwing. Look at you running. Look at you intercepting passes in practice. And after they got eliminated from the playoffs, what did Aaron Rodgers say the next Tuesday? I was never coming back. It was impossible. Oh. So the issue for people at ESPN is, hey, he's regularly attacking people that work for us. Regularly. Like shredding.
It's a hobby.
The journalists, the Adam Schefters, the Diana Rossinis, he's routinely attacking them. And now this Jimmy Kimmel thing, the part that people don't understand is Jimmy Kimmel doesn't just host late night. Like he is a brand at ABC. And he is a guy who makes them a ton of money. And Aaron Rodgers just came on and said that your cash cow over there is a pedophile.
Yeah, but that's the same thing as
let that sink in.
Joking about the fact that Aaron Rodgers thinks 9/11 was an inside job.
Yeah.
I know it's the same thing.
Yeah. Let's see. Boyd Lake, whose audience is larger, McAfee or Kimmel? Pat McAfee's, I would assume. I don't know, but just knowing Pat's YouTube numbers, and they talked about it today that they have an obscenely huge audience. I would assume that Pat's audience is larger. It's sports. It has everything that you need. Jimmy Kimmel's on in a niche time slot late at night. I would assume that Pat's. It's not a competition.
The content's different. It's not even comparable.
Yeah, I don't think it has any bearing.
Yeah.
On why you would.
So because he's got a bigger audience, it's okay to accuse someone of being a pedophile?
Yeah.
Is that what you're saying?
I think no. It's not.
What are we doing?
It more proves, I think, the point that we're trying to make, that you have more responsibility because you're on ESPN, ESPN Plus, ESPN the app, ESPN's YouTube channel, your YouTube, like you're talking to millions of people.
You can't take a breath without seeing Pat on ESPN now.
It's crazy. Mike Smith, does not matter whose show is bigger when it comes to libel slander. No, it doesn't. Greg Hawkins, howdy from the beautiful Grand America, casuals. I think the Pistons are here. Nice. Nice. Let's see. Boss Frog, what's up? Good to see you, Mo. Good to see you in Vegas. We golfed with, sort of golfed with Mo. Mo watched us golf poorly. Hello, casuals. Hope everyone had a great Christmas and New Year's. We did. Mark Barnett. MAGA always talking about size. Well, I don't know that it's a MAGA thing. I think when you look at, and I'm sure politics plays a role in it. This Epstein list thing, you guys, is going to be, it's going to be gnarly. Bill Clinton, I think, is going to be the first guy to just absolutely get shredded by this. There's already snippets on Twitter about testimony because a bunch of the documents that were dumped this afternoon about 15, 20 minutes ago now are depositions. And in testimony, a lot of testimony about Bill Clinton. I think Donald Trump is a very interesting figure because he's also there. I think Robert Kennedy Jr. is a guy that is not going to have a very good night tonight.
And I think the thing that
because those are the guys that we're talking about.
Yeah, I mean, you look at the pictures of these guys, and what always stood out to me, not even just now, but just like in all the time that I've even understood the Epstein stuff, is you look at these pictures, and it's not like these dudes are sitting at a business table, dude.
No,
like these guys are hand in hand. Like you look at Donnie or Bill Clinton, or like these are powerful figures in the world at that time.
And look at Bill Gates.
Yeah.
Melinda Gates gave an, what was that, 2 years ago now?
Yeah.
Several years ago, she gave an interview talking about how one of the main splits in the Gates marriage was the Epstein relationship that Bill Gates had. And that she went and met Jeffrey Epstein because Bill Gates kept talking about how great Jeffrey Epstein was. And she went and met Jeffrey Epstein one time, and she said, I had to leave. He felt like, she said something to the effect of, it felt dirty. He felt like a demon.
Right.
And it's wild. You look at, like, with Robert Kennedy Jr., man, like, how, man, like, how is Jeffrey Epstein in the White House?
Yeah.
How is that possible? Like, you look at the Prince Andrew thing, which is wild in itself. So we're not in the White House. Now we're in the royal family.
Right.
And this is just the beginning.
Yeah.
This is
so,
like,
you know, when we bring it full circle, you're saying that Jimmy is in this group. That's what the accusation is. So I don't know. I am very surprised, and I'll be honest, a little disappointed that people think that this is the same thing. And that Jimmy's just, Jimmy's overreacting.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know how you fix this if you're ESPN. And everybody is DMing me these lists and stuff. It's all good, dude. Like I think Pat apologizing to Jimmy Kimmel today was very interesting.
But I don't, my other thing, dude, I don't feel like it was a genuine apology.
He said, the quote is, I can see exactly why Jimmy Kimmel felt the way he felt, especially with his position. But I think Aaron was just trying to talk shit. End quote.
It's not about what he was trying to do, though. That's the thing. And the thing that bothers me with it is Pat's not taking accountability. Like, it's your show, dude. You're paying Buddy to come on your show and allowing him to do this. Like, at what point do we start saying, hey, yeah, maybe Pat's a little irresponsible. Maybe, just maybe, Pat is not like, some icon of sports talk. And maybe he truly is what we always have known him to be, which is a former football player, a damn good punter, an absolute G on the football field, and someone that just likes to sit around with his boys and talk sports. And maybe ESPN overplayed their hand with Pat, and maybe he's not going to be at the network for some huge long time, which he made very clear on his show today, which again bothers me to no end.
Yeah. And I think the other thing that you have to remember is I am in no way defending Jimmy. I mean, Jimmy Kimmel is a comedian, and he is a guy that makes jokes that I would never make. I would never make jokes about unvaccinated people. That's just not, but Jimmy Kimmel did. So it is what it is, right? Jim Choi, never watched Kimmel's and Bits out or McAfee. Doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. It does not matter. It does not. And it is what it is. And he says, breaking news, as much as I hate Aaron Rodgers, think he's crazy, Jimmy Kimmel is in fact on the list with some, he's not on a, everybody's talking about Jimmy Kimmel and his relationship with a guy named Adam Perry Lang, who they had a long friendship. And Adam Perry Lang was Jeffrey Epstein's personal chef. And Lang claims he didn't know who. Being friends with somebody that was Jeffrey Epstein's chef, does that mean he knew? Does that mean that he partook? I think you're making a long stretch.